Hey dadders, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be finishing off the theory iceberg that we started last time. So we got about halfway through. Last time we covered a multiverse theory, explored a headcanon for Jeff's mum's backstory, and wondered which characters might actually be Roger. If any of this sounds interesting to you, I'd recommend checking out the first video, but you don't need to watch that to get this one. With all that done, let's get started with the second half. Roger's children theory. This theory comes from Reddit user AltHawk8357, who argues that the people we see in the show who have Roger's body/head shape are actually Roger's biological children. There's been about 3 so far, and those are Wilbur Kentucky from Census of the Lambs, Nadia from The Enlightenment of Raji Baba, and Little Bonnie Ramirez from the reconstruction in Little Bonnie Ramirez. So all 3 of these characters have similar head shapes, small stunted legs and long thin arms. Stan even asks Wilbur Kentucky if he is Roger because they look so similar. Now, is this even possible? Well, there have been times where Roger has fathered animals and they all look like him. Like in the episode First Do No Farm, where several rabbit and termite babies are clearly Roger's children, so
the seed is strong.
There has also been evidence that Roger has the ability to procreate with humans, like when he births a full-size human Jeff in Roger's Baby. Although this is through eating Jeff's brain, so more like cloning, I guess. If we go all the way back to season 1 though, we see that Roger was able to pass an egg onto Steve, who then passed the egg onto Betsy White. Now, of course, we don't know what actually happened to that baby, but theoretically, could it have been a Roger human hybrid like Wilbur or Nadia? Aside from that though, this episode proves that it is possible for a human to carry Roger's egg, and so a human Roger baby is entirely possible. This is the best explanation in my eyes for characters like Nadia and Wilbur, because there's a number of reasons why I don't think they are just Roger in disguise. So first of all, I think Roger would just tell Stan that he was Wilbur. Secondly, Roger personas appear like normal human people through the other characters' eyes, as we see in Stanny Tendergrass when we get a view of Alicia Wilkner from Steve's point of view. And finally, in The Enlightenment of Raji Baba, the whole point is that Nadia is taking over from Roger's persona Tasha, so if Nadia was Roger, that would negate his whole meltdown and the plot of the episode. So yeah, I believe this theory 100%. Explaining Santa's history. So this one again is more of a headcanon than a real theory, but it comes from Elizabeth in the Facebook group. She argues that the Santa we see in American Dad is the same Santa that we see in Family Guy. Elizabeth argues that in the Family Guy episode Road to the North Pole, when Brian and Stewie help Santa and save Christmas, this is the status quo for a couple of years. But when Steve accidentally kills Santa in For Whom the Sleigh Bell Tolls, this triggers all of that previous anger and stress that Santa was working under for years, and explains his extreme hatred and determination to get the Smiths, despite knowing, because Santa is all-knowing, that Steve didn't mean to hurt anyone and was pressured into shooting the gun by Stan. I mean, the family did try to cover up the shooting by burying Santa in the woods and not telling anyone, but again, this is Stan's doing, but Santa vows to take revenge against all the Smiths. Additionally, Santa in both shows is quite frankly unhinged. In Family Guy, we see him giving a baby plutonium, get arrested for drink driving, and spies on a couple making love. All behaviour we would not be surprised to see from the Santa in American Dad. After Road to the North Pole though, he only makes bit part appearances in Family Guy. Could this be because he's too busy coming up with schemes to torture the Smiths, getting rid of Krampus, and reawakening Humbaba? The biggest issue with this theory though is that Road to the North Pole and For Whom the Sleigh Bell Tolls aired on the same day. So if we are arguing that this is the same Santa and we are on the same timeline, how do you explain that? Well, I think I have an explanation. If you're not already aware, Family Guy was cancelled after season 3 and was off the air for nearly 4 years between July 2001 and May 2005. When the show returned though, the status quo was very much the same, so it can be argued that the timeline continued from 2001 and that the timeline in Family Guy is roughly 4 years behind the present day. That means then that despite these episodes airing on the same day, they do not take place on the same day or even the same year in the canons of the two shows. Now, what about the hurricane episode where the Smiths, the Griffins and the Browns all experience the same hurricane at the same time? Well, if you watch my previous video, we can attribute that to the multiverse theory. Is that a cop-out? Yes, but all multiverse theories are cop-outs for inconsistent canon, so the show is Roger's hallucination theory. So another theory from the Facebook group, and this one comes from Esmeralda. Esmeralda argues that Roger doesn't live with the Smiths at all, and the show takes place in Roger's imagination. She gives an explanation for Stan, that he's the god of the cell, and that Klaus is the goldfish crackers Roger gets during lunch. But what about the rest of the Smiths and the side characters in the show? Well, maybe they put two guards on the door and Stan talks to this other guard about his family and the situations they get themselves into from time to time, allowing Roger to build an idea in his mind about who they are and how they act. Maybe these other guards are Jackson, Dick, Sanders and Duper, and they all rotate on different shifts. I assume Bullock would appear every now and again to see what was going on, so explains how he would know who the deputy director is. Or it is quite weird for the deputy director of the CIA to be English, so maybe Bullock is just a higher up and Roger is getting confused. In episodes where the Smiths go on holiday or Stan isn't working, this could be Roger coping with Stan's annual leave and imagining what his favourite guard is up to. So I included this theory because it's a staple of these theory videos, isn't it? Pick any show in the world and there will be a theory that the entire show is a character's hallucination. And I love those kinds of theories because they cannot be proven or disproven. You can argue that everything is part of the theory. In this case though, I think it's really sad to imagine Roger sat in a dark CIA holding cell, imagining his life in the outside world. He imagines a life where he is free and loved, with a family who appreciate him and allow him to be his authentic, extravagant self. Strangely though, I do think this theory is a good way of explaining why Stan is so willing to put up with all of the crap Roger brings to the family when he kicks Haley out for doing way less. Roger has turned the house into spring break, hosted the World Cup, turned the attic into a bar, ran a camgirl site from Steve's bedroom, and I know what you're thinking, it's because of the life debt. But in You Debt Your Life, Stan admits that he'd forgotten about the life debt and keeps Roger around because he loves him, whereas Haley gets kicked out in Stan Knows Best for dyeing her hair green and going to a party. In Less Money, Mo Problems, Stan thinks Haley and Jeff should move out when Jeff is only on minimum wage and Haley is still at college. But Roger has what appears to be unlimited money and resources to pull off his schemes and ideas, and Stan has never used money as an excuse to kick Roger out. The only time he has was when the life debt was repaid, but quickly replaced Roger with Andy Dick, who acted exactly like Roger. Additionally, in the early seasons, Roger says that he doesn't have any cool alien powers, but as the show progresses, we see that this is the furthest thing from the truth. Could this be Roger getting more and more inventive with his hallucination and imagination as his life in the CIA holding cell becomes more and more depressing and hopeless? So, yeah. The show being Roger's hallucination is not really something we can prove, but it can explain why Roger is able to do all of these amazing things he previously said he couldn't do, and why the Smiths put up with his shit when he's caused them so much hardship and misery. Snot's dark future theory. Back to Reddit for the next theory, and unfortunately this user has deleted their account, so I can't attribute it to anyone.
Whoever you are, thank you.
So this user believes that Snot ends up as a serial killer in the future and points to some convincing evidence as to why. Let's take it in order. In Jenny from the blog, after Jenny dies, Snot says that he's learned he can get over the death of a girlfriend really quickly. In Sense and Sensibility, Snot says that he should only let his anger out when he can no longer control it, in 20 years victim by victim. I mean, that one's pretty damning evidence, isn't it? In The Unincludeds, we see one of Snot's potential future selves who is a cannibalistic serial killer. Now, this is only a potential future for Snot, however, the future Snot mentions the trigger was that he spilt a drink on a girl and vowed to never speak to a girl again. This trigger doesn't actually change in the rest of the episode though. They resolve the timeline by doing the naked dance, so potentially this could still trigger murderous tendencies in future Shmooly.
The
Did you just call me?
Finally, now this isn't exactly clear evidence, but it is creepy. In Epic Powder Dump, Snot says that years of looking for his dad made him excellent at tracking people. Aside from those clips though, we can look into Snot's upbringing for more support for this theory. Not to get too psychoanalytical on you, but something that is very common in the childhoods of serial killers are trauma, abuse, and abandonment. I want to make it clear, I am not saying that all people who are abused, traumatized, or abandoned will hurt people. The vast majority of mentally ill people are the victims of violence rather than perpetrators, and plenty of people who have experienced trauma and abuse and abandonment go on to live healthy and happy lives. However, unfortunately, some of those people don't and do go on to inflict pain onto others. So, what do we know about Snot? Well, we know his dad left the family when he was quite young. In The Adventures of Twill on Jumbone and His Boy Jabari, Snot mentions that his dad ran away 5 years ago, making Snot about 9 when this happened. This could fuel those feelings of abandonment that are often present in serial killers. Not to mention, Esther Lundstein is not winning any awards for Mother of the Year anytime soon. It has been mentioned multiple times that she struggles with alcoholism. There is a revolving door of men and potential father figures in Snot's life that come and go, probably the most important being Dell, who Snot really bonds with before Esther ruins this by sleeping with Klaus. Now, there's no evidence that Esther is abusive towards Snot, however, a lot of this could be seen as signs of neglect, not to mention the family being really poor, and this leading to Snot having to go without many things and potentially fueling a bitterness towards those who have been more fortunate than him. So we take his history, in conjunction with the mentions of violence and being able to process death quickly, and it's not looking good, bruv. Who are Barry's parents, really? Okay, so sticking with Reddit for this theory, and again, another deleted account. Let me give you your credit, people. So, this theory tries to make sense of the conflicting information we have received about Barry's parents throughout the years. This user states that in earlier seasons, Barry has made mention of his parents beating him, locking him up, and not caring about him. But when we meet them, in Stan and Francine and Connie and Ted, they don't appear physically abusive at all. If you're not familiar with the show, Barry is what they call criminally insane and has to take medication to combat this. This theory argues that Barry's psychosis interprets their physical restraint on him as hatred or abuse when they were only trying to protect themselves, Barry, and others from him. Or could this all be a ploy by Evil Barry to get his parents locked up so that Evil Barry can be free to wreak havoc on Langley Falls? I left this second to last because I was imagining Connie and Ted being so scared of Evil Barry that they were physically restraining him, forcing his medication on him and locking him away, but also imagining a young Barry being confused and scared and feeling like his parents hated him. And it really wasn't a nice thing to think about, in all honesty. Or even darker is the thought that Evil Barry is trying to frame his parents for abuse they haven't actually committed and potentially ruin the rest of their lives. The issue with this theory, though, is that I have not been able to find much evidence of Barry talking about his parents in an abusive way. Neglectful and uninterested, sure, but not abusive. Now, this might be that I haven't found it. I can't really watch every episode that Barry is in for this video, as it would take far too long, but I looked on the American Dad Wikia page for Barry quotes and couldn't find any. I searched Reddit, and I also asked the guys in the Facebook group what they could remember and still couldn't find any quotes relating to abuse or locking him away. But here's what I did find. In With Friends Like Steve's, Barry says that his parents won't care if he stays with the Smiths for dinner and that they never care about him. In The Magnificent Stephen, Stan says that Barry's parents didn't seem to care that Stan was taking them on a cattle drive and seemed surprised that they even had a kid, but they did also give Stan permission to hit Barry. In Escape from Pearl Bailey, he also mentions that his mum does bongs, and from context we can assume that this is a regular occurrence. And finally, he also mentioned that he won't go to his dad's funeral in The Adventures of Twill on Jumbone and His Boy Jabari. Now, aside from giving Stan permission to hit Barry, which, if we're being honest, sounds like something Stan would lie about to justify him finally getting to hit Barry, all of this paints a picture of neglectful and irresponsible parents, but not parents who are physically abusive towards their son, and it makes no mention of him being locked away. If we are to believe the theory that they are so worried about him that they have him locked away, then wouldn't they want to pay closer attention to their son? Another issue I have with this theory is that oddly, it paints Connie and Ted as being worse in the earlier seasons, at the same time seeming to underestimate how awful they were when we finally got to meet them. They laugh and agree when Stan calls Barry a stomach-turning hobgoblin, and they shut him away in a treehouse with a blindfold and headphones that they can have swingers parties, something that Barry says happens often. They leave him at home by himself when they take Stan and Francine to the swingers cabin, and they also leave him alone in I Heard You Want to Buy Some Speakers. When I first saw this theory on Reddit, I really liked it, but the more I've looked into the evidence, the more I just think that Connie and Ted are terrible, neglectful parents who at best condone physical violence done to their son. They take care of his basic needs but nothing else. Explaining how Roger comes up with his personas. And the final theory I want to talk about, and therefore the darkest, involves who else but Roger. This theory also comes from Reddit where Tequila Dragon, I'm going to go with Tequila Dragon, argues that Roger's personas do not come from his imagination. This theory reckons that all of Roger's personas were once real human people who Roger has replaced. Tequila Dragon points to Roger's ability to essentially download a person's memories through probing them with his finger, as shown in Roger and Me, where Roger does this to Stan and Dr. Gupta. It makes sense then that he would be able to do this to others, and would explain why many of his personas have very complex and rich backstories and lives. It would also explain why some of his personas have human children, like Jeannie Gold, who has 2 adult sons, or how his persona in Roots has a human twin brother, or in the Neverending Stories where he has a human son who is in the CIA class that Stan is teaching. These aren't even all of the examples either, so leave a comment for other ones that you can think of. The question is though, if these personas were once real, who had lived, loved, had children, friends, siblings, where are they now? I think there's only one explanation. Roger's murdered them. That isn't even a crazy thing to say with Roger. He has quite the body count throughout the series.
Are you really asking that to the guy who just last week killed 6 people over $19?
Oh yeah.
I can't even begin to list them all, but here are 5 examples. He killed millionaire Matt Davis with a broken bong. He killed the real Michael in A Boy Called Michael by getting him sucked out of the airplane. Chaz the dirty cop in Cops and Roger, whose head he burst open with an elbow from the top rope, the girl who he slept with before the hurricane, and finally he killed all the celebrities on Hollywood Square in The Talented Mr. Dingleberry. So yeah, I don't think it's a stretch to believe Roger would kill those he has stolen the identity of. Additionally, I believe we get a glimpse into this process in The Dentist's Wife. Roger is obsessed with Meredith, attempts to take over her identity, and even convinces her husband that he is Meredith. The only issue is that Roger has not killed Meredith, so she and Francine are able to bring Roger back around. We also get to see Roger come up with a persona from scratch, Cecilia Takaru, and it immediately falls flat and Meredith is able to see right through her. Emotionally speaking, of course, Meredith doesn't see through the disguise and know that it's an alien in a wig. He then returns to the persona warehouse and burns it all down. Could this be because he tried to be original and it didn't work, so he's going back to what he does best, stealing the lives of pre-existing people? Last thing I want to say on this is I do think some of Roger's personas were created this way, but there are a few who are clearly made up. No one in real life would be called Reaganomics Lamborghini. Jenny from the Block isn't real, as Steve doesn't have a cousin called Jenny. Sydney Hoffman was also created to help Roger steal gloves, but Jeannie Gold? I reckon she's 100% a real person who Roger killed. So there we have it, the full iceberg. I'd like to thank everyone who posted these theories on Reddit or Facebook. Without you, there would be no video to make. I also want to thank everyone for the immense love and support in the comments on part 1 of the theory iceberg. As I'm writing this script, the views have gone from 2k to 6k overnight, and as I'm recording this, they've gone from around about 6k to 13k, which is honestly insane. I could never have expected one of my videos would get that many views. Thanks to everyone who has recently subscribed, and a massive thanks to those who subscribed when there was only 1 or 2 videos on my channel. It means the world to me that other American Dad fans are resonating with what I'm making. Thanks for watching everyone. Like, share and subscribe for more videos. See you in the next one.